Thanks, Joanna. Hello, everybody. My name is Karl Hoffman. I run a global health nonprofit called PSI, Population Services International. And yes, we do take a lot of money from Bill Steiger when he gives it to us. I guess what I would say at the outset is that we are one of a number of organizations that for decades now has always looked at the private sector as not only a promising, but the promising vehicle for approach to achieving impact in the low and middle income countries where we work, and we work in about 50 countries. I wish that we worked in education because it seems like from the conversation here and other things that I'm aware of as well, that the market failure in primary education around the world is as great or greater than the market failure in primary health care. And we work in health, public health, but through the door of the private sector. And we conceive of the work that we do there as responding to market failures. And I think that's fundamentally the same approach that undoubtedly investors take as well. We recognize that the opportunity is there in those market failures for impact, but also for returns. We're not set up to seek returns, we're set up to seek measurable health impact, but these are cousins after all, as somebody else made the point already. One of the things that USAID has brought to this whole conversation that's been very helpful is not just what we see, for example, in terms of this education opportunity, but the whole blended finance toolkit that they've put out. I think the USAID structure in that toolkit is to sort of reconceive of their countries in different market groupings. And we also have just reorganized ourselves to go from the conventional geographic approach to reorganize the work in our 50 countries according to market conditions. So we're looking at foundation markets, transition markets, and acceleration markets, and trying to tailor our approaches in each of those categories so that we can take better advantage of the opportunities and partnering that's possible to achieve some of the health impact opportunities that is there. It never really has made sense to treat Kenya and South Sudan as though they were in the same basket. And so instead we will be treating Kenya and India and other countries like that in a basket, and South Sudan and Mali in their own basket, for example. So we're trying to, and I think that embraces a sort of private sector approach to opportunities as well. Our friend from Gilead pointed out that there is a fundamental mismatch in the world of health between what kills and sickens people on the one hand and what donors are willing to pay for on the other. And this gap is widening, even in the poorest parts of the world. We know there is great undone work in malaria, HIV, and TB, but also non-communicable diseases, which are driving health burdens globally in Zambia as much as they are in the UK. So, that's a challenge, I think, for all of us working in this space of what has been up to now largely donor funded. But that future is quite different. And as Bill and others have said, the shifting balance between private capital and public capital going to solve the SDG challenges around the world is clearly underway. So as we look at that declining share of the total flow of capital going into low and middle income countries to deal with social impact requirements, it's really important, and I think our Canadian friend made this point, to recognize there are some things that only the public sector and only public money can do, including creating the kind of enabling environment where all the other players in the blended finance space can find their day in the sunshine. And I think we can't lose sight of that. It's obviously true that the private sector is a huge untapped resource. We've always seen it. We work with the indigenous private sector. I think the exciting frontier for us now is trying to get into the world of risk capital and private equity and see how that can drive our impact through the indigenous private sector in the places where we work. But that ultimately rests on the right enabling environment, policy framework, and that relies on the government. Last thought, in terms of challenges that we have in this world, it's that enabling framework, it's the need to help integrate deals so that they are of sufficient size to be of interest to Africa Invest and others. If we know of opportunities, but they're micro, they need to be medium or macro in order to attract this sort of risk capital that you're talking about. And the final point is creating those deals, finding the way to integrate, and working on the collaboration that might take a year or less. Somebody's got to pay the costs of that, and it's not always clear who that is. So I think that's a real challenge that's unaddressed.